hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right now so you never miss an episode of Operation Truth. Send us an email, ask your questions, and very possibly we'll address your question on the air.
Operation Truth, the show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Welcome to Operation Truth. My name is Lou Palumbo, and with me, as always, my co-host Tom Fuentes. I'm going to start out by mentioning the borders, as I always do. Maybe if I say it enough times, people will understand the significance of this problem. Independent of this concern of people just illegally accessing the country now, we're seeing an uptick in conversation regarding the number of people crossing the border who may represent a threat to our national security. No one better to speak to that issue than Tom Fuentes, and we're going to get on to Tom in a moment. I say these things redundantly to you with the hope and the expectation that at some point it'll sink in. We have a major problem at this border. And if I follow the statistics that have been presented, and Tom will elaborate on this, I'm sure, I believe we have encountered 169 people on a terrorist watch list. I don't know what has to be said to this administration to motivate them to address this border. Approximately 6 months ago, and live Senate hearings that I happened to have put on, I listened to Christopher Wray state that the southern border of the United States was a threat to our national security. Every 12 hours, the FBI was opening up a case regarding China's activity in the U.S., and none of this has gone addressed. So it really begs the question, what is going on here? On another front, you know, we're noticing that Israel, this battle, this war going on in Israel right now, and I call it a war because Netanyahu has declared war, has consumed the airwaves. We're hearing not as much about the borders, although some, especially in reference to terrorists, much less about the crime, which is just rampant in your major cities, your economy, your foreign policies, of which we're starting to embark upon a new foreign policy, and how we're going to embrace this conflict that Israel's been dragged into. And I say dragged into simply because we had a demographic known as Hamas choosing to invade a sovereign nation, Israel. The rest of it is in the news for you. And for everyone that's a denier, I want to reassure you, there are tons of photographs of these atrocities that were committed. So you can sit there in what I call the 51st state of America, the state of denial. But trust me when I tell you, these are going to be released to you at some point. And they lend itself to beheading children, raping women, burning people, the whole assortment of behavioral patterns that are consistent with a group known as ISIS, although they're now saying that Hamas is actually worse than ISIS, which is pretty difficult to conceptualize, but it's coming to fruition. Just something very quickly. Is anyone confused about how Israel responds to threats? Because since in my lifetime, there's been no equivocation. If you cross them, they go after you 110%. And they need to do that to preserve their nation. If you look at how they're geographically situated, on the south of them, they have Palestine and Hamas. On the north, they have Lebanon and Hezbollah. To the west, we have Syria and Iran and that West Bank, which is problematic. On the east, we have the Mediterranean Sea, where we happen to have two carrier groups positioned right now, and then a third ship en route to the Mediterranean. I want to first come out and say something that people need to understand. They are hell-bent on destroying Israel. And the way they're going to do it is basically by overcoming them. You know, it's not a very large country. It's surrounded by adversaries, literally. And without the help and support militarily of the United States, it's not going to prevail. Let's cut through all the baloney and nonsense about what the U.S. has to do or should do or could do or would do, and just simply acknowledge the fact that they are a cornerstone to our security. They're a cornerstone to our positioning in the Middle East and globally. What's interesting is I listened to Nikki Haley, who I have no qualms with. I happen to like her. but she stated something during the second primary that the Ukraine was a cornerstone to the United States. That's not quite accurate in my estimation. I would suspect they're a cornerstone to Europe, which begs the question as to why we disproportionately supporting this Ukrainian effort. We're now listening to the administration that wants to fund the Ukraine with another $61 billion, a lot of money. They're piggybacking this episode that's taken place in Israel. By the way, they're giving Israel $14.1 million, $14 billion, less than 25% of what we're funding towards the Ukraine. And then commingled in there are some other monies towards Taiwan and Indochina Straits and all this other nonsense, as I like to call it, which also lends the question, why isn't this aid for Israel being singled out so it can be expedited? We have a problem there too, by the way. We have no Speaker of the House, which makes the House of Representatives somewhat neutered. Things couldn't happen at a worse time. In addition to the fact that, we have Israel facing adversaries on three fronts. We have the United States facing adversaries on multiple fronts: the Middle East, Russia, Iran, China. Guys, pay attention. I don't know what to say about all of this, but I am gravely concerned. And again, it all goes back to our children, because I've had an incredible life. I've had a full life. I've had so much good fortune. It confuses me at times. I've had a big life. I learned so much, which is really what the exercise in being here is. And the thing that I learned about myself, and I learned about Tom and everybody involved in this podcast, Brian Williams, TJ Stone, these gentlemen that sit in this office with me every Monday and help produce this show. We're all here to try to make this place better before we leave. I'm not sure that's quite the agenda of many people in the media. And I don't want to go off on a tangent about the media, because they're the fly in the ointment today in this country. And our elected officials. It's amazing. This episode in the Middle East is being improperly reported at times. What's even more amazing is that we have elected officials, and this goes back to statements I made before. I hate to keep bringing this up, but I've spoken to a lot of these issues, like the borders and the conduct of some elected officials, Tlaib and Omar and Jayapal, and this anti-Semitism. There are 2.4% of the population of this country is Jewish. That's about 7.6%, 7,600,000 people. I don't see what the big problem is here. I mean, are they running around threatening you every day? Are they insinuating themselves into your lives? Are they lending their activities, lending themselves to your instability? What's with this preoccupation with hating these people? I don't get it. I have tons of friends, especially coming out of the city of New York, from all different walks of life: Black, Latino, Jewish, Catholic, even most recently, as there's been more of an influx of people who are of Islamic faith since the 90s, with Clinton bringing people in from Somalia, which is how Omar got in, by the way. More people of Islamic faith. I have no issue with anybody. I just remind everyone to stay in your lane, be respectful, and that would be majorly helpful. I want to bring Tom in right now because of this disproportionate amount of aid that's being suggested to the Ukraine versus this $14 billion, $61 billion, ladies and gentlemen, to $14 billion to Israel. And I remind everyone, we need Israel. Israel needs us, by the way, if they're going to prevail in this undertaking of this. Tom, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, my thoughts are, as I've said many times, that I think Joe Biden, the Biden family, are completely compromised by the Ukraine. That's why they can't wait to give them more money, more equipment, more everything anytime they ask for it, even though they're losing the war with Russia. They're not making any progress. Many of their senior officials have stolen the cash money that's gone. We're paying their salaries, their pensions, their health care, you name it. We have made Ukraine the 51st state of the United States. And I think it's because the Bidens have been completely corrupted, and that's the problem. Ukraine wants, Ukraine gets, because very easy for them to unload the evidence on the American people that will have Biden removed from office. So Joe Biden, with the attack on Israel, he flies over there. Blinken's been there a couple of times, Secretary of State, and he wants to hold this speech a couple of days ago from the Oval Office, which I think he's only done 2 or 3 times in 3 years. So he's going to give this important speech about Israel and what we're doing about it, what our policy is going to be. And he goes on the air from the Oval Office and then promises more than $60 billion in aid to Ukraine and less than 15 to Israel. So it was a scam. He scammed the American people, clickbait, if you will. Tell us it's going to be about supporting Israel, and it was about supporting Ukraine yet again.
The change from currency systems to fully digital cashless societies has intensified fear around the world. In mid-September, Wells Fargo and Truist banks planned major layoffs as an impending 2024 recession has been predicted by many economists. Many analysts are predicting silver will hit an all-time high in 2024. That's why you need to own silver as a hedge. Green energy demand will possibly turbocharge silver prices to 50, 100, even 300 an ounce, according to many experts around the world. Silver is a proven hedge against inflation. Since 1971, silver has returned over 11% when averaged yearly. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. Free delivery and extra silver with every $10,000 bought. Use promo code 007.
I want to say one thing, guys, as you listen to this podcast, so you clearly understand our mindset. Tom would be saying the same things if this was being carried out by Republicans, just like myself. I'm not married to the Democrats or the Republicans. My loyalties, my affection lies with this country as a whole and its wonderful people that I've had the good fortune to meet in my travels, especially in my youth and college, and then through my business, and most of all to the young people, my children, of which the vast majority of Americans have in some form. Whether they're 30 or 40, they're young today because they got another 50 years of this crazy. Tom, I do understand the problem with Trump. Trump dug his own hole, or his own, he made his own bed. Now he's gonna sleep in it. I understand why there's this personal animosity towards him. There's been a demeanor issue. There's been a lack of discretion. There's been harshness on his part. Some of the things that took place in his administration are irrefutable. Would you be kind enough to just brush over then versus now and go into this Abraham Accord?
Well, during the Trump administration, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, goes to the Middle East, many of the Arab countries there, and gets them under economic goals to form a relationship or a partnership, or at least accept Israel as an economic partner. And the accords are going terrific. And right before this attack that happened in Israel on October 7th, it was announced that Israel and Saudi Arabia were going to form an alliance. They were going to agree to economic work with each other and all of that. And all of a sudden, this attack happens and destroys all of that, all of the Arab countries now. But even before that, Biden pulled out of the Abraham Accords. He basically dismantled it when all of that good work had been done, again, by Jared Kushner during the Trump administration. And once Biden got in, he destroyed that. And so now, we're reaping that as well, that you have all these Arab countries that were forming a relationship economically with Israel are now out of that. They're on their own. And now you have this, situation where terrorists do what they do on purpose. Hamas decides to do an attack so horrific, so emotionally horrifying to the Israelis that they are surely going to retaliate and attack back in greater proportion than what the attack was on them. And nobody can blame them. They have an emotional reaction to attack. And now that's what's happening. And all these other Arabic countries are saying,
Paper to write on.
to Israel if you go too far. If Israel goes too far in their attacks in Gaza, these other Arab countries are going to retaliate. And some of those countries are significant. Now, up in Lebanon, you have Hamas's other partner terrorist group funded by the Iranians called Hezbollah. Well, Hezbollah has over 150,000 rockets. They have thousands of troops. They have an army. They have everything to invade Israel if they choose to. And if they believe they're going to be backed by the other Arabic countries that surround Israel, even as far away as Turkey, with a 1 million-man army, then yes, the retaliation against Israel for Israel's retaliation against Hamas will be significant enough that it could end Israel as a nation state if the U.S. doesn't step in. Now, the problem with the U.S., we've been telling people for how many months now, oh, we don't have any more equipment that we can send to Ukraine. We don't have any more 105 howitzer artillery shells that we can send. Now suddenly we're telling Israel, oh, we're here for you. We've got our aircraft carriers out there, 2 aircraft carrier battle groups off the coast of Lebanon and now in the Persian Gulf. And don't worry, we're gonna save you from annihilation. And yet, a lot of military experts are saying, you know, the U.S. does not have the army anymore to be able to do all of that protection of a third country like Israel, like Ukraine, like Taiwan, and many other places. So that's the issue right now, is what will happen if Israel does go full force into Gaza. And they've already been bombing a lot of, facilities in Gaza already. But if they send their army in there full bore, thousands of Israeli soldiers, well, at least hundreds at the minimum, will be killed. And hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinians in Gaza will also be killed. And the question is, how will they know if they're killing any Hamas or not?
Yeah, they're not, Tom. There's another facet of this discussion that people need to be aware of. We keep hearing about Iran, and I'm going to bring you right back into this Iran discussion in 1 second. But the inevitability of confronting Iran is there. I know you're ready to roll with how we placated Iran during the Obama and Biden administration. This is a reality, ladies and gentlemen. The weak link in the chain for us in the Middle East right now, on the heels of Tom's comments and observations about us getting along better with Israel and some of the other Middle Eastern nations, is Iran. There's a problem here. It isn't if, it's a when. And I'm wondering, Tom, if one of the byproducts of this war that we're now experiencing in the Middle East is going to be Israel going after Iran. Because at some point in time, if we're going to start holding people accountable, it shouldn't stop with Hamas. It should stop with those that are funding, arming, and motivating them. And I know that you agree with that. So give us a little insight as to our administrations and their positions towards Iran, which has actually precipitated this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, they very much have been appeasing Iran financially, especially over the beginning of the Biden administration. So, we were hearing a lot of intelligence reports during the end of the Trump administration that they were intercepting communications coming out of Iran that they were broke, that the public was rising up against them, and they didn't have the cash they needed to really support Hamas and Hezbollah and the other terrorist organizations that they back in the Middle East, especially. So now it looks like we've given them new life. We've been giving them money. It's not just that we were going to give them $6 billion to free the hostages a couple of weeks ago. Apparently that money has not yet actually been sent to Iran, but millions, if not billions of other dollars have been. And pretty much the go-ahead from the Biden administration to continue with their nuclear program. So we allegedly had Iran on the ropes recently, but in the last 2-3 years, they've gotten new life.
Rare coin prices have exploded in the last 3 years. Hard Asset Management, one of the world's largest precious metals and rare coin dealer firms, makes recommendations on what to buy for collectors who know what they're looking for. We maintain one of the world's largest rare coin inventories for individuals seeking to diversify precious metals and rare coins. We can make strong recommendations in areas that we feel have the strongest potential for long-term growth. Call today, 844-426-4653 to receive our free rare coin newsletter, or register online at bmcham.com. Free delivery and extra silver with every $10,000 bought. Use promo code 007.
You know, Tom, I don't think that $6.5 billion that we're holding up is a deal breaker either, based on my understanding of who else may be supporting them. We're hearing rumblings about China. We definitely believe that Iran has their fingerprints all over this. But I'm not sure that holding back $6 billion is a deal breaker, number one. Number two, I thought we sent a message about our hostage situation. You know, we were paying them this money in exchange for hostages that they were holding, which just further encourages you to take Americans hostage. Just common sense, ladies and gentlemen. This is not brain surgery, and I'm not exactly a rocket scientist in all of these areas, but it is common sense. They're now holding, we understand, maybe 10 or more Americans hostage. I am confused as to why there isn't more rhetoric, which is rather free-flowing in this country, in the wrong direction, why it isn't being directed towards Hamas and other countries and saying to them, if you do not release these hostages, there's going to be an extreme military response. Now, my feeling, and from what I'm hearing from sources, of which I will not reveal, we already have special forces units in Israel right now, and probably in Gaza. I wouldn't doubt it if they haven't penetrated Gaza as well. But at the end of the day, guys, you know, this is going to be a defining moment in history. I hope that this administration is up to the task. We're going to see. I would say the positioning of these two aircraft carriers, these strike fleets in the Middle East, with the third one on the way, Mediterranean, is a step in the right direction. The thing we cannot afford to do right now is be a paper tiger. Tom, I know you're familiar with that expression. I also want to ask you this, Tom, about the breakdown in intelligence. You know, I spoke before, independent of this podcast, about how the hell could they have such a dramatic breakdown in intelligence? All of us, MI6, the Israelis, the United States, everyone. How did they all miss this? Or did they, Tom?
Good question, Lou. We don't know if they did. And like you say, knowing the resources and the capabilities of the intelligence agencies you've just named, you know, it's hard to believe they could miss it. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't have had intelligence from humans in Gaza and other locations, as well as electronic intercepts, a number of methods that this was being planned by Hamas, and it was going to take place, and confirming the warning from Egypt that Hamas is preparing to attack Israel. And Egypt and Israel have had a very good relationship in recent times. So Egypt has been somewhat supportive of Israel and their security. But you have, you know, Shin Bet and Mossad, two agencies in Israel, the equivalent of CIA and FBI, who have been regarded as, oh, they're among the best in the world, the best intelligence. And the Israeli military is fantastic, the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces. And then you add the support of CIA and MI6 in England and NSA from our side. You have all of this intelligence support going to the government of Israel that should have been telling them, and it's hard to believe they weren't telling them, going to be attacked by Mossad. Now, the question is that you have Netanyahu running Israel, who's on the verge of being prosecuted for corruption and or just removed as a failed government of Israel. And a good way to stay in office is to be fighting a war, is to become a wartime president or prime minister. So did they miscalculate? Did they think, well, we'll let Hamas come over the fence, do an attack, kill some of our people. It won't be that bad. And then Hamas, the attack comes, and it's so horrific and the news about the nature of the attack, the treatment of babies and old men and women and all the people in between, that when that comes out, it's way more horrific than might have been predicted at first. So now Israel's going to retaliate. And by the way, this is terrorism 101. Do an attack and hope that the people you attack over retaliate, that what they do to you is way worse than what you did to them. And therefore, that adds more support to your side. And that's kind of what we're seeing already. Israel hasn't even launched this full-scale ground attack in Gaza. And you've got protesters all over the world, including our big cities in the United States, our universities in the United States, taking up Hamas's side in this. That Israel is committed, if they go into Gaza, and they're already dropping bombs in Gaza, that it's a war crime. And if we assist in this, it's going to be a war crime that we'll be accused of. You know, and we had this going back 20, 30 years when you had attacks in Lebanon and other places blaming the United States because our battleships in the Mediterranean, like the USS New Jersey, were launching, you know, bombs from 30 miles away, landing in Lebanon, landing in these places, killing the local population there. And so that's kind of what we'll have here. Gaza, you know, if Israel's dropping bombs in Gaza, you know, the label on the bomb is going to be made in the USA. That's going to hurt us. That's going to want other people to join up against Israel, form a coalition. And if that happened, if all of these surrounding Arab countries that have not been attacking Israel in the last most recent couple of years, especially under the Abraham Accord, but if they all unify to attack Israel because they think Israel has overreacted and Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza with the assistance of the United States in Gaza, then this is a very difficult. And now if the U.S. doesn't support Israel, they could be conquered and no longer be an independent country. Additionally, Israel has the same problem that we have in the U.S., and that is our military has gone downhill and is not the capable world-saving military it used to be. So we are putting out messages where we're bluffing. We're going to save Ukraine. We're going to save Israel. We're going to save Taiwan. And we have a lot of military experts saying, you know what, we're not capable of saving any of them. We're lucky if we can save ourselves.
You know, Tom, not for anything, but the word restraint isn't in the vocabulary of Israelis. And that's what I alluded to earlier in this conversation.
Well, the word that needs to be is survival. So
yeah,
whether restraint is or not, the survival of Israel is dependent on the messaging that goes out. And so far, it's all been anti-Israel. So they need to try to change that narrative and maybe show some restraint or prove that they're not trying to annihilate Gaza and kill everybody there.
Well, we know the word survival. They thrive on that word. The word restraint doesn't exist. And I don't know why everyone is so surprised by the reaction. They somehow think there is some form of a measured addressment to this problem with Hamas. And a lot of people are having a really difficult time understanding what Hamas is and its origins. You know, Tom, you were mentioning about demonstrations in the United States. Last night in Brooklyn, they had a very large demonstration, I understand, involving thousands, and there were physical confrontations. I just want to touch on this just very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to speak about this probably in the next episode because living in New York, we entertain everyone. You know, we have the St. Patty's Day Parade, the Columbus Day Parade, the West Indian Day Parade, the Puerto Rican Day Parade. You know, we have more parades than I have hair on my head, and I want you all to take a close look. I got a lot of hair. Celebrating or expressing your concerns over Palestine, for example, and what you consider to be egregious, and your love and loyalty to the Palestinian state. If you feel that way, guys, why don't you go there? Why are you disrupting our cities? Why are you further taxing our law enforcement agencies? Why are you further taxing our budgets in our major cities? You know, we're going to break for now with this episode. When I come back, we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to ask Tom about why we want to stay in the Ukraine. You're going to find the answer interesting, but I'm going to come right back to this topic in the next episode of this celebrating other nations while you live in our nation, and this ill-conceived notion that we could possibly entertain the whole planet under one roof of America. Guys, this has been, I almost said between the lines, but it isn't. This has been Operation Truth. You can contact us at operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. We encourage you to become part of this conversation. Last week, we did have a call-in where people are able to call in and have questions and discuss a lot of these issues that we like to address. We also want you to question us. We're not here to tell you everything you're supposed to be thinking. We're giving you food for thought. We want you to go out, become your own investigator. Tom, I thank you as always for today. We're going to come back shortly. Next episode, discuss this, why we're still in the Ukraine. You're going to be surprised to hear the explanation. We're going to further this discussion about what's going on in America, not just the borders, although the borders are feeding it. Thank you guys for joining us today. See you in the next episode.